Ryan Carter was a humble human diplomat from Earth. He was chosen to attend a very important meeting with the powerful Zelfar Empire. Ryan felt both nervous and excited as he prepared for this historic event. The Zeltharians were known for their strong traditions and strict customs, and this meeting would decide the future of both worlds. The meeting was held in a grand hall on a massive space station orbiting a bright blue planet. The hall was decorated with intricate carvings and glowing lights. When Ryan entered, he saw many strange and beautiful figures dressed in colorful garments and unusual jewelry. Their eyes shone with wisdom and mystery. In the center of the room sat Queen Silara, the leader of the Zeltharian Empire. She was tall and graceful, and her presence brought both respect and fear to all who saw her. Queen Silara wore a crown that sparkled with tiny lights, and her expression was both kind and powerful. As the meeting began, Ryan spoke in simple, careful words. He explained Earth's wish for peace and friendship. The Zeltharian leaders listened intently, though their faces were hard to read. The atmosphere was tense, and every word mattered. After the formal talks, a grand banquet was served. A long table stretched across the hall, filled with strange and colorful foods that Ryan had never seen before. Soft music played in the background as the guests enjoyed their meal. Ryan tried to relax, but his mind was full of worries about the future of his mission. In his nervous state, Ryan made a critical mistake. When it was time for a ceremonial toast, he lifted his goblet in a gesture meant to show respect. Unknown to him, this gesture was also the ancient Zeltharian sign of a marriage proposal. The room fell silent as Queen Silara watched him carefully. Her eyes widened in surprise, and then a gentle smile spread across her face. In Zeltharian culture, such a proposal was a sign of great honor and trust. Without a word, Queen Silara accepted the proposal. Her nod was firm and graceful. The hall erupted in whispers and murmurs. Some of the court members smiled in approval, while others looked shocked and confused. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as he realized what had happened. He had not meant to propose marriage to the queen. He had only intended to show respect. Ryan tried to speak, to explain that his gesture was a mistake, but the words failed him. In that moment, he was bound by an ancient promise that he had never wished for. His life, and perhaps the fate of two worlds, had suddenly taken a new and unexpected turn. This misunderstanding set the stage for a future filled with challenges, mystery, and change. The history of Earth and the Zelfar Empire would never be the same again. In that grand hall, with all eyes upon him, Ryan Carter began his journey into a destiny he could not have imagined. After the strange banquet, the news of the accidental proposal spread quickly. In the great halls of the Zeltharian palace, whispers and murmurs filled the air. Everyone in the court was talking about what had happened. Queen Silara, with her calm and steady manner, soon called for a public gathering to address the matter. The palace was filled with officials, nobles, and guards. All eyes turned to the grand throne where Queen Silara sat. Her robe shimmered under the soft lights, and her crown sparkled like a cluster of stars. With a quiet strength, she began to speak in clear, simple words that everyone could understand. "I have received a proposal," she said. "I accept this promise of marriage, given in good faith." Her voice was firm and gentle, and it echoed through the hall. The declaration shocked many in the room. Some officials exchanged nervous glances, while others bowed their heads in respect. In that moment, it was clear that the queen's choice was final. She had chosen to bind herself with a promise that came from a simple gesture, but carried the weight of an ancient tradition. Back on Earth, the news brought great worry. Leaders and diplomats alike were confused about what the Queen's acceptance meant for the future. In the quiet offices of the Earth government, advisors debated and planned their next moves. They sent urgent messages to the palace, seeking clarity and a way to manage the situation. But deep inside the Zeltharian palace, no one could change the Queen's decision. Ryan Carter, the man who had made the accidental proposal, felt lost and scared. He sat in his small room, his mind filled with regret and fear. Ryan knew that his mistake had set in motion events he could not control. His heart pounded every time he thought about the many eyes now watching him and judging his every move. His diplomatic team had warned him, "You must not try to undo what has been done." Breaking this promise could bring great danger to both Earth and the Zelfar Empire. Ryan understood that his simple mistake was now a heavy responsibility. As the days passed, the palace was busy with plans for the upcoming ceremonies. Queen Silara met with her closest advisors to discuss the details of the union. She saw this promise as not only a duty but also a chance to bring a new era of peace and strength to her people. The preparations were careful and detailed. Every step of the process was planned to show that the Queen's decision was thoughtful and true. Throughout the empire, people talked about the Queen's declaration. In busy markets and quiet homes, the story was repeated over and over. Some people felt hope that this unusual promise could lead to a stronger future. Others were anxious about the changes that might come with it. Ryan Carter now faced a future he had never imagined. He knew that his life had changed forever. The accidental proposal had set him on a path that would test his courage and wit. With the Queen's declaration echoing in every corner of the palace and across distant Earth, there was no turning back. The meeting of two very different worlds had begun, and both sides would have to learn to live with the promise that had been made. After the Queen's declaration, Ryan Carter found himself pulled into a world of rules he had never known. He was quickly led away from the public hall and into the inner parts of the Zeltharian palace. Every step was watched by stern yet graceful guards, and every door he passed whispered secrets of ancient customs. Now he was a part of a world that was not his own. Inside a vast hall decorated with tall columns and beautiful murals, Ryan met a group of royal advisors and officials. A kind yet firm advisor named Lorena explained, in simple words, that he now had to learn all the customs of the Zeltharian court. "Your role is important," she said. "The traditions here are our guide. You must follow them with care." Ryan nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. His first lesson was about etiquette. In Zeltharian culture, every gesture held deep meaning. Ryan learned that even a small tilt of the head could show respect or challenge. He was taught how to bow correctly and how to offer the proper greeting that would show his loyalty to the Queen. The rules seemed endless, and with every new detail, Ryan felt more like he was trapped in a maze with no clear exit. Meals at the palace were no different. Ryan soon discovered that every meal was a ceremony. He had to wait until the Queen took her first bite before he could start eating. Even the way he held his utensils was observed by noble eyes, as any mistake might be seen as disrespect. Ryan tried his best to remember all the small details, knowing that every gesture could have a big impact. Beyond etiquette, Ryan was given ancient texts to study. These writings explained the long-held traditions and rituals of the Zeltharian court. They told stories of old, mixing history with myth, and were written in a language that was both beautiful and hard to understand. Ryan spent hours reading and taking notes, realizing that understanding these texts was key to his survival in this new life. Days turned into weeks as Ryan's life became a routine of learning and practice. Each day was filled with classes, practice sessions, and long discussions about royal protocol. Even when he was given a brief moment to rest, the weight of his new role pressed on his heart. He missed the simplicity of Earth, where things were clear and straightforward. Yet in the midst of these overwhelming changes, there were moments of kindness. A young courtier named Dara often shared a gentle smile and whispered helpful tips about hidden customs that were not written in any book. Dara's small acts of friendliness gave Ryan hope that even in a strict and complicated world, he might find a way to succeed. Ryan Carter felt trapped by royal protocol, yet each lesson slowly built a new strength in him. With every rule learned and every ceremony practiced, he began to see a path forward, a path that might one day win the trust of Queen Silara and the people of the Zeltharian Empire. After several weeks in the palace, Ryan Carter began to see that not everyone was pleased with his sudden role. Behind polite smiles and respectful bows, Some nobles whispered secret plans. They saw Ryan as a threat to their power and to the old ways of the Zeltharian court. Their hidden schemes were dangerous, and the air grew thick with suspicion. One quiet evening, while Ryan was alone in the palace library, he sensed that something was wrong. The library was dimly lit and filled with old books and quiet secrets. As he studied a scroll about ancient customs, he heard a soft rustle behind one of the tall columns. A shadow moved quickly, and Ryan's heart began to race. A figure in dark clothing crept toward him, a sharp blade glinting in the low light. In that split second, Queen Silura appeared at his side. With swift and graceful moves, she intercepted the figure before he could reach Ryan. In a flash of motion, she grabbed the intruder and sent him crashing against the stone wall. The cold blade fell to the ground, and the would-be assassin lay stunned. The queen's eyes burned with both anger and sadness as she stared at the fallen enemy. Her voice was calm but full of power as she ordered her guards to seize the attacker. The guards rushed in and quickly restrained him. Ryan stood frozen, shock and relief mingling in his chest. He had never seen Queen Silura fight so fiercely. In that moment, he realized she was not only a graceful leader, but also a fierce warrior who would protect her people at any cost. Her actions had saved his life, and he felt both grateful and troubled by the harsh reality of palace politics. In the days that followed, rumors spread quickly through the corridors of the palace. Many believed that the assassination attempt was not a random act, but a carefully planned move by a group of nobles. These powerful figures, threatened by the new union between Earth and the Zelthar Empire, wanted to remove Ryan from the court. They hoped that by doing so, they could return to the old ways and regain control over the kingdom's future. As these dark whispers grew louder, Ryan felt the danger closing in around him. He realized that his accidental promise had plunged him into a world of hidden enemies and deadly plots. Every smile and courteous nod might hide betrayal. The realization was frightening, but it also made him more determined. He needed to understand these dangerous politics if he was to survive. Despite the threat, Ryan found himself admiring Queen Silura more deeply. Her decisive action during the attack showed him a side of her he had never known, a side of courage and strength that went far beyond royal duties. This new view made him question his earlier wish to escape the palace and the engagement. Perhaps, he thought, there was a chance to bring change and honesty to this troubled court if they worked together. In that tense moment, as the court's hidden enemies stirred and danger loomed, Ryan Carter resolved to learn the ways of Zeltharian politics. He would stand by Queen Silura and face the challenges ahead, even if it meant walking a dangerous path. After the palace buzzed with the news of the accidental proposal, the next step in Zeltharian tradition was to test Ryan Carter with the wedding trials. These trials were a way to show that he was strong, smart, and able to survive the challenges of life in the Empire. Even though Ryan was a human diplomat and not a trained fighter, he had to prove his worth to both Queen Silura and the entire court. The first trial was the trial of strength and combat. It took place in a large arena built within the palace grounds. The arena echoed with the sounds of past battles and the cheers of an expectant crowd. Ryan stepped into the arena and faced a group of seasoned Zeltharian warriors. Their weapons were designed to be non-lethal, but the challenge was still tough. Ryan knew he did not have the same strength as the warriors, so he relied on his quick reflexes and agility. He dodged and weaved through their attacks, using clever moves to turn the fight in his favor. Despite a few falls and stumbles, Ryan's determination shone through. The warriors, impressed by his resolve, backed off. The court, watching from the stands, murmured in approval. Next came the trial of intelligence. In a dimly lit chamber filled with ancient symbols and mysterious puzzles, Ryan was set a series of riddles to solve. The room was quiet except for the soft sound of his footsteps on the stone floor. Ryan examined the symbols on the walls and recalled the lessons from the ancient texts he had studied. With each puzzle he solved, the path through the chamber opened a little more. His careful thinking and logical steps allowed him to avoid hidden traps and false clues. The scholars of the court, who valued wisdom and learning, watched with keen interest. Ryan's success in the trial of intelligence was clear proof that his mind was as sharp as his determination. The final trial was the test of survival. Ryan was led out to a rugged part of the palace grounds where nature was wild and untamed. In this trial, he had to find shelter, start a fire, and secure clean water, all with very simple tools. Ryan gathered fallen branches and dry leaves to build a small shelter. Using a spark from a flint, he managed to ignite a small fire that brought warmth and light to the cold, dark area. His knowledge of basic survival skills, honed on Earth, helped him find water by following natural signs. Even in the harsh conditions, Ryan's spirit did not falter. His resourcefulness and calm under pressure were evident to everyone who heard of his efforts. At the end of the day, after facing the 3 difficult trials, Ryan stood before the entire court. His body was tired, but his eyes shone with pride and relief. The wedding trials had shown not only his physical and mental strengths, but also the unique qualities of human ingenuity and perseverance. Even Queen Silara, known for her stern demeanor, could not hide a look of admiration. In that moment, the court saw that Ryan Carter was not just a simple diplomat. He was a man who could rise to meet the challenges of a new world, one trial at a time. After the trials ended, Ryan Carter expected to be given some time to rest. Instead, he was summoned to Queen Silara's private chamber, a place where very few had ever stepped foot. His heart pounded as he walked through the grand hallway, escorted by 2 silent guards. The walls were lined with glowing symbols, and the air carried the soft scent of exotic flowers. As he entered, Queen Silara stood near a large, circular window that overlooked the vastness of space. The light from distant stars cast a soft glow on her regal figure. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "You have done well in the trials," she said, her voice calm yet firm. "Few expected you to survive, let alone succeed." Ryan exhaled slowly. "I suppose I'm full of surprises." A small smile tugged at the corner of her lips, but it vanished just as quickly. She gestured for him to sit. "Tell me, Ryan Carter, do you understand what your proposal truly means?" He hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I know it was a mistake," he admitted, "but I also know that backing out would bring trouble for both of our worlds." Silara studied him for a moment before speaking. "It is more than that. This marriage is not just about tradition. It is about power. The Zelthar Empire is strong, but not invincible. For years, my position as queen has been challenged. Many believe that without a mate, my rule is weak. Your proposal has given me something I never had before, an unbreakable claim to the throne." Ryan's breath caught. He had suspected politics played a role, but he hadn't realized just how much. "So, I was useful to you." "Yes," she said simply, "but not just as a political tool." Ryan blinked in confusion. Silara's expression softened, just a little. "You think I am a cold ruler, bound only by duty, but I accepted your proposal not only because it secured my rule, but because you are different." "Different how?" Ryan asked, his voice cautious. She stepped closer, studying him with eyes that seemed to pierce through him. "Humans are unpredictable. You do not follow the rules of our world, yet you adapt. You lack strength, yet you survive. You are weaker than my warriors, yet you outsmarted them. I have spent my life surrounded by those who seek power through fear. But you fight in a different way." Ryan didn't know what to say. He had assumed the queen saw him as a burden, a mistake she had to deal with. But now, standing before her, he realized that she respected him. "So," she continued, "I will ask you again. Do you wish to continue with this union, knowing what it means?" Ryan swallowed hard. For the first time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about choice. He looked up at the powerful queen before him, and in that moment, he realized that he wasn't just stuck in this situation anymore. He had the power to decide what came next. And that, more than anything, changed everything. Ryan Carter had barely begun to process Queen Silara's words when he received an urgent message from his diplomatic team. The Earth government was concerned, very concerned. They did not trust the arrangement between Ryan and Silara. To them, a human marrying the ruler of a powerful alien empire was too risky. They feared that Ryan was being used as a political tool and that Earth's position in the galaxy could be weakened. The message was clear: we will extract you. Be ready. Ryan sat in silence, staring at the screen. His heart pounded. Escape. Just days ago, he would have done anything to leave this strange world and return to the life he knew. But now things had changed. The Queen had shown him her true thoughts, her struggles, and her reasons. The court, once dismissive of him, had begun to respect his presence after the wedding trials. And then there was Silara herself. She was not just a cold ruler, she was a leader fighting to hold her empire together. She had given him a choice, a real choice, for the first time since the accidental proposal. Now, Earth was offering him another one: leave or stay and face an uncertain future. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He stood on the palace balcony, looking up at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, his home planet waited for him. A simple life, free from alien traditions and deadly court politics. But did he really want to run? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at his door. A familiar figure entered: Dara, the young courtier who had been secretly helping him learn Zeltharian customs. "You seem troubled," she said, tilting her head. Ryan sighed. "Earth wants me to leave." Dara's expression darkened. "And will you go?" Ryan didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned against the railing, thinking, "If I leave now, it will look like Earth never respected the Queen's decision. It might even start a conflict between our worlds." Dara nodded. "And if you stay?" Ryan chuckled bitterly. "Then I become the human consort of the most powerful queen in the galaxy, surrounded by people who want me dead." For a long moment, there was silence. Then Dara spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Then perhaps it is time for you to choose your place, Ryan Carter. Not as a mistake, not as a diplomat, but as someone who fights for what he believes in." Her words hit him like a shockwave. He realized that, for the first time, his choice mattered. He was no longer just a human lost in an alien world. He had become a part of it. Ryan turned his gaze toward the Queen's Tower, where Xilara's light still burned bright. He knew now what he had to do. As Earth's forces prepared to extract him, Ryan Carter made his choice. He was not leaving. Ryan Carter had made his choice. He was not leaving. But Earth's forces had other plans. Late at night, while the palace was quiet, a stealth team from Earth infiltrated the royal grounds. Their mission was simple: extract Ryan, by force if necessary. The Earth government believed he had been manipulated, that he was in danger, and that removing him was the only way to protect their interests. Ryan was in his chamber when he heard a soft click, the unmistakable sound of a door being unlocked from the outside. His instincts screamed at him to move. Just as he turned, two shadowy figures stepped in, dressed in black, their weapons drawn. "Ryan Carter," one of them whispered urgently. "We're taking you home." Ryan's pulse raced. He didn't want this, but before he could protest, they grabbed him. The operatives moved fast, dragging him toward the balcony where a small hovercraft waited. Ryan struggled, but they were trained soldiers. He wasn't strong enough to break free. Then, a sharp, commanding voice froze everyone in place. "Unhand him. Now." Queen Silara stood at the entrance of the chamber, her eyes burning with fury. Behind her, a squad of Zeltharian royal guards appeared, their weapons drawn and ready. The Earth operatives hesitated. One of them tightened his grip on Ryan's arm. Big mistake. Before he could react, Silara moved like lightning. In a single fluid motion, she closed the distance between them and struck with precision, disarming the nearest soldier and sending him crashing into the wall. The other one raised his weapon. But before he could fire, Silara's guards overpowered them. Ryan stumbled back, breathing heavily. The queen turned to him, her expression unreadable. "I trusted you," she said quietly, but there was an unmistakable edge of betrayal in her voice. Ryan shook his head. "I didn't plan this. I didn't ask for them to come." Silara's sharp gaze studied him. She was silent for a moment, then turned her attention to the captured Earth soldiers. "You have violated the sanctity of my home," she said, her voice deadly calm. "This is an act of aggression." One of the soldiers, still defiant, spat out, "We were sent to protect him. Earth doesn't trust you." Silara's hands clenched into fists, but she did not lash out. Instead, she looked at Ryan. "And what do you say, human?" Ryan took a deep breath. The fate of Earth-Zeltha relations depended on his next words. "I chose to stay," he said firmly. "This is my decision." The queen's expression softened, just slightly. She turned back to her guards. "Take them to the holding cells. They will answer for their actions." As the soldiers were led away, Ryan realized the truth. His loyalty had been tested. Silara had doubted him for a moment, but in the end, he had proven where he stood. But the damage was done. A rift had been created between Earth and the Zelfar Empire. And Ryan knew the hardest battle was still ahead. The palace was in chaos after the failed extraction attempt. The queen's advisors urged her to treat Earth's actions as an act of war, but Silara remained silent, her expression unreadable. Ryan Carter knew that Earth's betrayal had shaken her trust, not just in him, but in everything they had built together. Ryan was escorted back to his chamber under heavy guard. He understood why. The queen no longer knew if she could trust him. The thought hurt more than he expected. He had made his choice to stay, but words were not enough now. He had to prove it. Ryan spent the next few hours thinking, searching for a way to fix the damage. Then, a memory surfaced, the ancient texts he had studied for the wedding trials. There was a passage about an old Zeltharian bonding ritual, a public display of devotion that could erase all doubt. It was rarely performed, but it was powerful. If he wanted Silara to believe in him again, he had to go all in. The next morning, before the entire court, Ryan stepped forward to make his grand gesture. The royal hall was filled with nobles, warriors, and council members. The queen sat on her throne, her posture regal but cold. The failed extraction had wounded her pride, and Ryan knew that this was his only chance. He walked to the center of the hall and, in a single bold move, knelt before her. Gasps filled the room. Zeltharians did not kneel. It was an act of submission, of complete devotion. A foreigner doing so was unheard of. But Ryan wasn't done. He raised his hands, palms open, in the ancient vow of loyalty. The same vow warriors once made to their queens in times of war. Before all who witness, Ryan said, his voice steady, "I pledge my loyalty to Queen Silara and the Zelfar Empire. Not as a diplomat, not as an outsider, but as one of you." Silence. Complete, deafening silence. The court was frozen in shock. Even Silara's expression wavered for a brief moment. Then, slowly, she stood from her throne. She walked toward Ryan, each step measured. The tension was unbearable. When she finally reached him, she lifted her hand and gently touched his forehead, sealing the vow. "The court has seen your devotion," she said, her voice softer now. "Your place is here." With those words, the atmosphere shifted. The court murmured, respect replacing suspicion. Ryan had done the unthinkable. He had chosen Silara and her people over his own world. For the first time since his accidental proposal, he felt like he truly belonged. But as he looked into Silara's eyes, he saw something else, something deeper. Not just respect. Something warmer, more dangerous, and far more real. And Ryan realized that this was just the beginning. The royal court had seen Ryan Carter's vow, and there was no turning back. The murmurs of doubt faded, replaced by whispers of curiosity and respect. A human had knelt before the queen, not as a servant, not as a prisoner, but as a true consort, a partner willing to stand by her side. Queen Silara watched him carefully, her piercing gaze studying the man who had changed her fate. She had expected resistance from him, perhaps even resentment. Instead, he had given her loyalty, not because he was forced to, but because he chose it. "Rise, Ryan Carter," she commanded, her voice echoing through the hall. Ryan slowly stood, his heart pounding. Silara turned toward the gathered nobles, her expression one of quiet strength. "Let it be known," she declared, "that this human stands as my consort. His words, his actions, and his courage have proven his place among us." A wave of murmurs swept through the court, but no one dared to challenge her. The trials, the battle for trust, and now the public vow had sealed his fate. Later that night, Ryan stood on the grand balcony overlooking the palace city. The sky was a swirling mix of deep purples and blues, stars shining like distant lanterns. He exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. "Do you regret it?" Silara's voice came from behind him. He turned to see her standing there, dressed in a flowing dark robe, the glow of the city lights casting soft shadows across her face. She was no longer the untouchable ruler, nor the calculating queen burdened by politics. Right now, she was simply Silara, a woman who had fought battles of her own. Ryan shook his head. "No," he said honestly. "It's strange, but I feel like this is where I was meant to be." Silara studied him for a moment before stepping closer. "You are unlike any being I have ever met, Ryan Carter." He chuckled. "That's just a fancy way of saying humans are stubborn." A small smile played at her lips. Perhaps. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the tension between them different now, not of uncertainty, but of understanding. "You changed everything, you know," Ryan finally said. "For both our worlds." Silara nodded, and perhaps that is a good thing. She reached out then, her hand brushing against his. It was a small gesture, but in that moment, it spoke more than words ever could. The stars above bore witness to the unlikeliest of unions. A human, once a mere diplomat, now stood as the consort of an alien queen. And together, they would shape the future of two worlds. For better or for worse, Ryan Carter's accidental proposal had changed the galaxy forever.